Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We're going to be talking about the heights. We've been talking a lot about the depths, but we're going to talk about the heights today. How do I explain the heights? I think that if you think about yourself as a tree, and I often do see this, I think that your spine and all of those, I just see a tree a lot of times in meditation, and I know that our ancestors saw a tree in meditation, the tree of life. So there's something definitely to that. When you think about the roots that reach all the way down, but then you think about the branches, above ground and that reach all the way up. You're not just meant to reach depths, you're meant to reach heights. And heights have a lot of visibility. And so heights are limitless. Heights have a lot of visibility. Branches have a lot of reach. And so when we think about our lifespan, when we think about our goals, and we think about the things that we want, a lot of times, especially if we're brought up in very conservative backgrounds, we really burrow into the roots of things, and we make our nest of I'm a nice person, I do good things, but it never reaches the light of day. Everything stays under the ground. And so, this idea of glowing up and being seen and being perceived, there's a lot that goes into why that's terrifying, but what it means to be born of a purpose in an ecosystem and have that purpose be interacting with something in the ecosystem that is within arm's reach, usually. It's a net, it's a network. And so there is something about roots for sure. But there's also something about heights that we often neglect. And so this is going to be a fun reading. I don't exactly know where this is going. It's been kind of a rocky, I don't know, the energy's been different. So the healer, okay. With the creator and the healer here, this is a perfect combination of energies. So what are the heights? Okay, the heights are going to be confidence. Going around feeling completely confident, being unfazed, unfrazzled, not being bothered by, any of the things, because the center of gravity is within you, and your center of gravity is rooted in your sense of self, and your sense of self cannot be rocked by anyone else's perception. I mean, that's what confidence kind of ends up being. Confidence is funny though. About 98% of the time, confidence is associated with defense. Is confidence a defense? A lot of times confidence is associated with defense. So that's that could be a whole topic, but I'm trying to connect with our guides. I'm going a little bit faster than usual because next door I saw crews show up, and they're going to put on a new roof, and so we're going to move through this a little bit quickly. I've been working with just with my guides. I've been keeping it close to home. I've been keeping it my guides are my family. I've been keeping it with my family. And I've been working a lot with my the guides that I consider my brothers, which this all falls into kind of private territory a little bit. I have a group of guides that I consider my band of brothers. And those are guides that are, that's it's stuff I would never really talk about, but they were working with me so heavily this week, and I've been working with them so much that I think that we're just going to work with them. We're going to work with my band of brothers, and we're going to work with my band of brothers and talking about confidence. We're going to talk about confidence, outside of this notion of defense. We're going to talk about reaching the heights. What does it mean to reach the heights? A lot of us are what's the heights? I don't want it. It's when the sun is on your face and you are soaking in nutrients and there are birds singing around you. It's not about show. And I think so much of us we're scorched earth when it comes to perception and being perceived. And we're all sort of scorched earth because we think of perception and being perceived in hierarchy. And we think of it in terms of those who are perceived, these icons of, and all of the twisted, stuff like that. Competitive, and to be seen is to be fed. To be seen is to be fed. To be the confident one, to be the competent one, to be the one out front is to be the one who doesn't have to fear for their survival. They don't have to be a slave. And so everyone clamors for that in one way or another. And no matter what you were born for, what you were purposed for, there's a kind of thing around the scorched earth, the scorn, of showing up and being seen and being perceived. But I think that that's the wrong experience. I think that's the wrong template. I think that's the wrong example. I don't think that reaching heights with your branches out and the sunlight and what it means to be perceived and to be on this, like, you know, a beacon for those that are meant to connect with you, the birds that are meant to sit on your branches. And so, my hand on this. Yeah, so we're just going to get into, you know, what does it mean to be perceived from a place of ecosystem, a place of love, a place of, like, you're appreciated by those around you. And I think that that's why we're kind of talking with my band of brothers, because I've had this band of brothers since I was, I want to say like 4 or 5 years old. And I've never, like, they've never been anything other than, like, they seemed like kids when I was a kid. They seemed like adolescents when I was an adolescent, and they seem like adults when I'm an adult, and yet they're definitely spirits. And so I think that they are a type of, like, adaptogen, like an adapted, like I think that the spirit realm is really cool, and I think there's a lot of layers to it. And I think that what we think of as spirits is not like how they are. You know, I think that everything that you, like, if we throw out everything that we've ever been told, because it's also partial, the band of brothers, and this is not something I really talk about because it's, like, you know, in my, like, the dignity of my privacy section of things. The band of brothers for me are that they have, if you think about, like, the class of like vitamin or the class of drugs that is, like, adaptogens, they adapt to what your body is doing in real time in order to facilitate, like, whatever the transfer is. And I don't know if that's exactly true, someone has to look it up, but, like, there's something about it, I see it as, like, adaptogen is the right word, and so we'll look it up in a little while, find out what it means exactly, but it's about adapting. And so this band of brothers for me, it's a group of spirits that sort of adapt to me. With the devil here, that's an interesting card. So authentic expression, heights. I want to think about being perceived in a different way than we think about being perceived. Not about attention and the economy of attention. Attention and the economy of attention is economy stuff that is like the scorched earth that makes us all afraid to be perceived. But reaching heights and being perceived is something totally different, and it has a lot to do with authentic expression, and that gets cut off when we're really young. And so I was thinking about how to get us into this reading and how to get us into this topic, because at its heart, it's healing self-abandonment and reclaiming trust. That's confidence. That's what confidence is. That confidence is not, that's why I'm like, confidence can be a little bit of a defense. A lot of people operate with confidence as a defense. And that's a very different look than confidence as a center of gravity. And confidence as a center of gravity is like a trust in yourself more than anything else. And so, you know, so just deconstructing some of these things is really important, is because we all need confidence, but there's a wrong kind of confidence that's just a defense, you know, and then there's the right kind of confidence. And so when I was asking our guides, like, how do we get us in here? They reminded me of a reading I did, I guess it's like a year ago, maybe even longer. It was the beginning of the Little Mermaid series, and the beginning of the Little Mermaid series happened with the Morgan. And I think I'm going to link those readings along with this one, because I think this is where we left off. We left off with this part in the story. So we did a fairy tale series, and we sort of went through the stories, and we went through the parts of the stories that related to us. And so we're in this part of the story where, you know, the question of our own voice and the question of healing our own self-trust, healing self-abandonment and reclaiming trust equals confidence at the core level. And so when we think about, like, how do we do this? You know, we have to be very tender and careful about how we enter the territory. And so my guides brought me back to the Little Mermaid, Ariel. The when I was little, I watched that movie over and over again with the red hair, you know, cartoon. And we're gonna re-enter that story, because I think if we enter that story at the point that she has her major, like, you know, everything goes to SHIT, then we're probably gonna see ourselves, like, in that moment as, like, the first place where we abandon ourselves. And so I want to think about this, the part of the story of the Little Mermaid where she sees the prince on the shore. She's in love. She goes, sings about, like, boozits and wobbits and, you know, combing her hair. And then she goes and she finds the Witch of the Ocean. And with the Witch of the Ocean, she says, I will do anything to have legs so I can go and be with that man. And Ursula, the witch of the ocean, sees this fool and she thinks like, oh, this idiot doesn't know her worth. Ariel does not know the worth of her voice. And in the beginning of the movie, we find out that Ariel's purpose is her voice. Her voice is everything. That's her everything. That's the most important thing. There is no more important, her, like everything that she is purposed for and built for. And like the core of who she is this voice. And I don't know if you guys remember, like I'm hearing it and like, It's so important to think about the fact that when we talk about authentic expression, we talk about voice, and we even look at it through the lens of this story, that voice is the thing that you cannot barter away for any reason. And so that's the first thing that Ursula says, I'll take your voice and I'll give you a pair of legs. And Ursula dances around in this underground lair, and there's all of these little worms that used to be bright, beautiful, thriving mermaids. And so it was like an example of like what can become of the person, the soul, the lifespan that is devoid its purpose, its voice, because of some some barter that they didn't want to make, some barter that nobody ever wanted to make. And so we can get that voice back no matter what our decisions are, no matter what our barterings were. And so that's where we're going to enter the story. So that's a lot of a preamble. But with passion for purpose, I love this one, of course, and the healer and the creator and the devil and the king of cups, with the death card here and the bottom of the deck being about the magician. There's a couple of like faith points here that I want to bring in. Hand of Fatima, this is like speaking to me now. Somebody had asked about Rumi and channeling Rumi, and I'm like, absolutely. I'm gonna have to make space for that because I have to actually sit with the master and learn their language. But I took out the Rumi deck, and so I want to point out here that with Hand of Fatima, one of the first things that we lose by way of conditioning, by way of connection to the earth. Think about connection to the earth as connection to your imagination when you were a child. And I think that's a really important analogy or connection. What is the connection to the earth for a human? What is our connection with Mother Earth, where we're in her sentience and we're communicating at the level of her sentience and we're in purpose and we're not influenced by anything other than the earth itself, the birth itself, the raw materials without the molding, without the chiseling. That's going to be the 5-year-old's imagination, the 4-year-old's imagination. And that's why the band of brothers are here. That's so interesting. And so now let's think about this, right? So your connection to Mother Earth and your connection to the imagination are going to be, I think, the same thing in a kind of a way. Because think about, this is blowing my mind. I'm having a whole like absolute revelation when we band of brothers imagination, 4 or 5 years old. We're going to think about what it means to get you back to your imagination capacity and your limitless capacity and your trust of the universe capacity and your trust of yourself capacity that you had in the form of your creativity and imagination as a 4 or 5-year-old kid, where there weren't judgments on it, and what it meant to show up was just to like draw a picture on like your crayon all over the whatever plate table and pick it up and show it to someone, and the joy of sharing, the joy of communication, the joy of creation to material to gift. So this Hand of Fatima sort of connects us back to the mother. And so I want you to think about, the first step of what it means to creativity as a spiritual practice, and faith by way of sentience doesn't come from you, therefore you're like not the king of everything. and if that is the case, then there is a greater intelligence at play, a greater sentience at play that gave you sentience. And so we can reconnect to this, and this is channeling, because I want to teach you how to channel. Performance is what we're taught. Be a good girl and now you're going to get attention. Be a good boy and now you're going to have a good life. Meet these goals, this thing, do this way, that way, perform in the right way, perform in the wrong way, punished, perform in the wrong way, shunned, perform in the wrong way, shamed. That's economy. We're going to get rid of that. And we're going to go back to connection, and we're going to belief is permission, that we are connected to the divine that created us. And that divine energy that created us has a purpose to express through us. And so the first step is that in re-engaging that imagination, belief is permission, And that creative capacity, belief is permission, is the belief that channeling is possible. That is authentic expression. Why is channeling authentic expression? I don't know. Somebody look it up, think about it. I have no idea. I'm just going to channel it through. But in terms of what it means to, connect with the mother, and I don't know why we didn't get an answer just there, but we didn't, because I think the Band of Brothers is playful. When we think to connect to the mother, we think about this fact that, and I'm hearing my Band of Brothers say that spirits are adaptogens. When we think about the fourth dimension, because the fourth dimension is spirits that are our guides are saying, just like, please you don't need to explain everything. Spirits are adaptogens. Just write that down. Okay. Now, so when we have Hand of Fatima and we connect with the mother, we connect with that Mother Earth. We're going to reconnect with the earth. How do you do it? You reconnect with your imagination. You belief is permission, that you're a part of the ecosystem and that there is a purpose that you were designed for, because the egg chooses you out of all the sperm. And so we're wanting to shift our perspective on the safety of participating with the world, and the safety of showing up, and the safety of showing ourselves and creating into our lives and creating into our healing process. So the first thing that we start with when reconnecting with that imagination, because a lot of nutrients comes from there, we're seeking nutrients from external imagination, the externalized imagination, other people's material art projects that are showing us like their imagination. We're connecting with other imaginations in order to get, a sense of the picture. But I want you to reconnect with your imagination as it is connected to the earth and the roots and the soil and the mama. Because there's a death and rebirth to be happening here around the idea of real confidence. Real confidence is you trust yourself, and nobody can tell you how to do it. You have to behave this way or that way, and if you behave that way, you're bad and naughty, and no one will love you. If you behave this way, you're good, and you will get the approval and the attention and the sustenance. That's economy. This is different. This is a reconnection with imagination. Mother Earth. That's the sentience of the earth is also imagination, because this is where we get tripped up, And so when we have that belief as permission, and we know that we're purposed, and we know that we have something very special about like what the depths have to bring the heights through channeling, and that channeling is for each and every one of us, and that confidence, real confidence, is the trust in yourself. Behave this way or behave that way. I will behave the way I feel. I trust myself. Thank you. Go fuck yourself. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, and to do that and to really like link in and like get that grip, it doesn't mean that you become someone who can't be told that you're wrong. It's different, so it's knowing yourself at the level of identity. And we wanted to think about identity less in terms of group identity, and identity more in terms of your voice and identity. Identity should change through the lifespan. It's an amalgamation of everything you take in and then express. And so it also, when we sort of swoop back around until we take in from the mother, we're connected to imagination, we're in ecosystem, like her sentience, as it informs our sentience, is then translated through our language into a communication that we share that is then her. And so like we want to be like, our creativity as creators should be like roots in mother, not necessarily in others, right? And so when we think about like those roots in deep and strong, and that sense of self as informed by purpose, as been informed by that relationship, as inspired by that connection to her sentience, your imagination, unhindered by everyone's opinion about what imagination is and isn't, because we can go into the nuts and bolts of that forever. And then moving into what it is to get that inspiration, get that channeling, get that connection with the earth, feel yourself as part of the ecosystem, and then gain the confidence in communicating with her, co-creation, that channeling, that voice, that identity. Identity is in relationship to God, and God is earth, because earth is the only thing that we can tangibly point to and say, right here, life comes from it, or God. Like, that's it. And so I want you to think about this fact that like when you were born in purpose, you are the magician. You were born with everything that you could possibly need to fulfill that purpose. You were built with all of those connection channels of communication plugged deeply into the earth. that passion is for your purpose. That is what it is purposed for. So the passions that naturally arise in you, not the ones given to you, and not the ones that are not the economy, but the passions that arise naturally in you. You love to run really fast. You love nothing more than blowing the recorder. You know what I mean? We're going back to like 4 or 5 in terms of reconnecting with your imagination. And what inspired your expression at that point when it was imagination to expression, fast track, you know, train. You know what I mean? Like no stops along the way of checking yourself and what do they think and what do they think and what do I think and what do we think? Just like inspiration, expression, boom, without any delay. I mean, impulse control is always important, but we're not talking about that. You have your impulse control. You're an adult. Now it's about how do you get in connection with the inspiration to expression highway without the interruption of any of the voices that keep us like, you know, wallowing in like the what do they think self-abandonment cycles. And then having the wrong decision happen or having the wrong belief, you know, set us up, or, you know, what it is to reclaim trust. Or you might be more like me, where you never stray from like the cord of the inspiration. Like you might have no impulse control when it comes to inspiration and expression, at which point you've been really hurt by the world. And everybody who has that has been really hurt by the world. And we all have it naturally at 4 and 5, and that's why where we get hurt, and then we fall in line. And then we find ways to and if we don't fall in line, when things go wrong, we blame ourselves. And when we blame ourselves, we lose trust in ourselves. And when we lose trust in ourselves, we lose trust in the capacity of the earth and everything we've been given to do anything and get anywhere where we want to go. And then we start putting limits on ourselves. I'm gonna have a drink of water. I usually do this in a sloppy way, but I'm trying to. So let's return to Ariel. She sees her object of desire. Passion is stirred. She's singing. She starts to sing. He hears her voice. Now, the prince hears her voice. He hears the voice of Ariel, and he's like, that's my girl right there. Boom. Where's that voice coming from? I know that voice anywhere. My soul hears it, and it literally like leaps from the belly of like the, you know, the depths. There is a connection there. She is following the mother. She is following her intuition. She's not wrong that there is some kind of quantum entanglement between her story and the story of that Eric character, that prince. And they are meant to entangle, and they are meant to dance, and they are meant to love each other. It is part of the whole drill. And that voice is it's the horn. It's the judgment call, like into the skies. It sets off the story. And he hears her voice, and he's like, there it is. There it is. That's it. That's all it ever was. And he is locked in and ready. But something happens. They're different. You know, there's social problems here. Like he has legs and a kingdom, and lots of people with legs and a kingdom, like, you know, legging around, you know, all kinds of things to organize and run and do and be. He's human. He's getting it done. But she is a creature of the sea, and she swims at will, and she is with nature, and she is the mother. The Aries card here. Yeah, this is the prince right here. We're gonna call this one the prince, because this is like, you know, getting it done, you know, agency. But Ariel is a Pisces. Ariel is a creature of the sea, and she is swimming, and she is, you know, look at all that fire. Oh, well, we're talking about passion. She's not like him, and there's no roles for a situation like this. There's no path forward in this exact situation. Ariel, who is singing, you know, this is her voice. Like Eric, who is hearing her, like what's going on? Like there's something out there in the sea that I would need like a boat, and how the hell am I going to get there? Like, do I swim a little bit? You know, what's going on? I think he fell into the water and she saved him. And like, so now it's just like, there's a hook is in, you know, the limerence is like all the way up. The gods are calling both of these characters into a story that they cannot ignore. They are purposed for this story. The passion is ignited. It's not going to turn off. And so, yeah, the Sagittarius. And so the mission begins. You know, and so we enter the story, and we've all done this. How many of us, you know, like we have a thing that we love. We like sing it out. La, 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 you know, like we have something like we're 4 or 5. What are you going to be when you grow up? I'm going to be an astronaut. Okay. No, you're not. You know, what are you going to be when you grow up? I'm going to be an actress. Like, absolutely not. What are you going to be when you grow up? I'm going to be a singer. Nope. Like, you know, we all have like this, where the voice, like, you know, is very organically expresses itself. And it could just be like an obsession with bugs. You know, like how many, like marine biologists, like all, and a lot of these things are informed by our environment. So like, I think we're getting a little off track when we think about like what we wanted to be when we were 5 and 4, because when we were 4 and 5 years old, we were making the choice of compliance versus punishment the entire time. And so what part of you, when you sing or when you sung, was just wanting to be held or helped or heard? And it's interesting that the Aries card comes out, because, you know, even though that signifies, you know, Eric, I think we're going to be moving between Eric's perspective and Ariel's perspective throughout this reading that we're doing. And so with this Aries card, like, you know, Eric is born with his feet on the ground, and oh, I just had a weird experience. Hold on, I have to get a hold of myself. Longing without judgment. Yeah, let's just leave it in on, like, let's like pull it into like this notion of longing without judgment. And I knew this was gonna happen. I cannot tell you how fucking difficult it has been to be at odds with nature right now. So when you are a witch, I'm gonna tell you a little tidbit. We're gonna break story for a minute. When you are a witch, you become part of an ecosystem. You become kind of like weather. You become kind of like nature. And I don't mean like any, like, I think it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain. But I'm so at odds with where I'm living, and I'm going to move. And until I move, I have to be like this, I don't know, I'm a force of nature. So as a force of nature, at odds with the location that I'm at, and the relationship to the earth that I'm standing on. I'm not even talking about the culture or the people. I'm talking about like ecosystem. I'm in an ecosystem, and I'm like, I'm going to leave this ecosystem. And then me and this ecosystem are having an experience. And this is just my, again, I'm bringing you into some of the, like, you know, more private ways in which I operate. But every time I'm about to move from a place, I start to have an antagonistic relationship with it. It's just the way that it rolls with me energetically. And so today, the next door neighbor is hammering. They're putting on a new roof. They showed up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and they started pulling the roof down, and they're hammering, and they're replacing the whole roof next door. Across the street, I'm starting to hear lawn work. This is my time frame. So I'm like thinking about, like, so I feel like this is just a good example of like, being an ecosystem is not necessarily like easy. It's not an easy thing to be a part of nature, to exist with nature. When you're a part of nature, there's an adapted genetic quality to like the connectedness that you have. Like that primal worldview isn't just everything is connected and you're an observer looking in. It's stepping into connection with everything. And now things start to things start to operate as if you're a part of it. And so like I'm a part of this ecosystem as like an antagonist, and it's acting as if I'm an antagonist. And I know that I'm an antagonist because I feel antagonistic. And so now there is like my feeling of antagonistic is now like it circles back, it mirrors back. And so I think that that's important. And I think that that's important because, you know, it wouldn't come into this reading if it wasn't important. Like these things don't just fly in here for no reason. So the reason why that is important is because the way that we feel about ourselves and the environment that we are in actively influences the way that the environment responds to us if we're looking at it from a primal worldview. And in this way, we get like a nugget of truth around this idea of manifestation. Manifestation, is it real? Yeah, but like I would critique the living shit out of it. I would sit down with like I would do a peer review paper. I would do like a research like forum like to get it right, because I think the way that people throw around manifestation is a lot about willpower and like it being on a good diet and like having a good body because you put the effort in, because you have a good life, because you manifested right. Like it is so like bleh, gross. But I do think that when we talk about, you know, the spirit realms and the dimensions and the world that we're in and the kaleidoscope, you know, adapting is central to like all that sentience and all that we are is. And so when you work on yourself, all of that work within yourself does translate to an experience outside of yourself. So when we talk about reaching depths and allowing those depths to like bring us to a place where we can reach heights, we're really talking about getting that internal state right, because again, like when I'm an antagonist in a place, I'm not going to have it go smoothly. And it's not going smoothly because I don't want to be here. And so, but that is like the nature of it. And the more removed you are from that, the more in the economy, like I think that you like are, because I think the economy almost safeguards you from that, and everything like just feels like moods that happen arbitrarily, not like purposefully. But being connected in really does show you when you are in that, like you have roots in the underworld and you are experiencing the heights of the upper world, you like have an impact on your environment, and your environment kind of speaks back to you. And so now back to this notion of allowing, back to this notion of your voice, back to this notion of trusting your intuition. How many of us have trusted our intuition? How many of us have felt a certain kind of way and felt like it destroyed us to do that? When we've had passion, the Libra, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm going to bring justice. How many of you are like the neurodivergent justice warriors? All of you. I know this collective well. You're my justice warriors. How many justice warriors go to bat? That's right and that's wrong, and I will die on this hill, and only to die on that hill. Only to die on that hill. Let's be real. Let's be real. How many of us, when it comes to like self-abandonment, it's after an experience where you died on some hill and you're not going to do that again. And so you're going to abandon that passion. You're going to abandon that voice. You're going to abandon that hope. You're going to abandon that dream, because you know what it is to go, to have that inspiration to expression, impulse train, send you off a cliff. That can happen. When we talk about ecosystem, we're talking about an experience of you influence the ecosystem, and then the ecosystem like goes back. So I'm gonna probably have electrical and like weird things go on like with me, because my energy is an antagonist in an environment, and I'm doing it. I'm antagonizing the environment. It's responding back. I'm antagonizing the environment because I'm like, I don't like you. And it's saying, well, good, you're not going to have a moment. Like this is the thing. Like this is a primal worldview. The reality of a primal worldview isn't a perfect God. It's not, I'm a well-behaved person and then I get a blessing. It is we are part of this adventure. Life with mother, life with goddess mother is adventure. Life with the Christian God or the God of like even like rational science is like the behavior model. That's a totally different experience of life. That's the economy experience of life. And so I want to bring us back to like finding, like reconnecting with the creator, with the mother, is being up for adventure and not having like that center of gravity of self-trust is not about everything going smoothly. It's not. It's about your communication with the mother that inspires you, to inspiration that moves you. And in that adaptogenetic process, the alchemy of new situations that you are being moved along. You're not necessarily in control. You're in co-creation. You're expressing down the river as the white water moves, the boat along. That expression is you. The river is the mother. You're going somewhere together. It's adventure. It's adventure. It's adventure with the sounds in the background. It's adventure with being true to yourself and being a little antagonistic because you don't know why you're purposed to be an antagonist, but here it is, and it's not about judging whether or not you get the approval or the disapproval because the behavior is right or wrong. It's more about that authentic expression, fueling that sense of identity and not feeling like someone stole your voice, not having that Faustian bargain. And so when we think about, the contract that you signed that you didn't understand, that's going to be like that. So I'm thinking about Ariel, the mermaid, the mermaid, having a drink of water. I don't know if you guys can hear the symphony of nails and hammers. And like every time I complain about noise, I hear the video and it doesn't seem like it's there. So I'm going to just be chaotic and adventurous. This is life, right? So hold on, let's get a little bit more water. And we're going to start here with this notion of like Ariel enters the cave with Ursula and there's the little worms and they're like dancing around. And Ursula's like, I'll take your voice. I'll give you a pair of legs. You're gonna go up there. You're gonna flash your little legs. You're gonna do a little dance. And Eric is gonna be like, you're the one. I knew it. I knew it all along. You got the plan, and you've got the right idea. The truth is, Ariel does have the right idea. She's meant to connect with Eric. What Ariel doesn't understand is that she's meant to connect with Eric via voice. And so she just bargained away the connection tool. That's the contract you don't understand. So oftentimes when we have this passion and this drive and we're going to bring the truth and we know, that's the right thing. That was not wrong. Your intuition was not off. The things that you wanted the most, the people that you trusted the most, it wasn't your intuition. It was something else along the way, some mitigating circumstance. And mitigating circumstances and adapting is a part of this adventure, because Ariel did not trust her own ability. She looked at herself, she's like, that one has legs, I have fins. This is never gonna work. I can't trust my own ability. I can't trust my own sense of that what I have been given is everything that I need to get there, is what Ariel needed to be. Everybody write this down. Everybody find a pen. What I have been given is everything I need to get there. Period. Ecosystem, purpose. What I have is everything I need to get there. That's all. The first thing that you need to understand is that when that intuition comes in and says, here, we're going somewhere, you're doing something, you're having this experience, you have everything that you need to get the experience, you yourself. We start bargaining away. Ariel's like, I need to go to somebody else. I need somebody else's power. I need somebody else's wisdom. I need somebody else's experience, because for whatever reason, I can't get that with just me. Now we bargain away our voice. That's the very beginning. But this is tricky. We're not going to get it right. In fact, this entire Earth experience is about learning not to do it wrong, because what you are purposed for is not just for this Earth. It's for an eternity. I have to cough 1 second. My throat chakra just kind of like clenched on me there. Let's see if I can just... So you have whatever you need when you have that passion, that desire to achieve something, to be something, to use your voice in a certain way. You have it on your own. When you start conferencing with everyone else, this is where the cracks, where the manipulation, where the opposition, where the tension guiding can come in. Because when we do it wrong, the mother brings in a corrector. What does the corrector look like? An adventure where you learn never to freaking do that ever again. So help you God. Because the mother's corrections are fierce and harsh, but they bring us into, like, we never make that mistake again. We heal. It's done. Boom. But where we get lost is like, we get lost for the cracks. We get lost at the level of advice. We get lost at the level of, I couldn't trust myself. And so I asked for somebody else's help. And help is an interesting thing here, because help is part of purpose. Asking for help and leading with need is part of how we know what we're meant to do. But when we like bargain away our voice for a pair of legs, let's look at that. The devil. The devil. Look, the King of Cups. So Ariel goes out to sea. She's like, I know that this is right, this is true, this is justice, this is it. And then she heads in that direction. But what does she do? She makes a stupid bargain, and she says, you know what? She doesn't know what's going on. Let's just be clear. We're not always in control. So one of the first things that we have to do when it's receiving trust and getting our self-trust back is knowing that, like, you are not always in control. You can mitigate, you can adapt, and you can innovate. So these are all things that you are given as a creature to get yourself back on track, back to your voice, back into purpose. And so, like, when we find ourselves, like, I believe with all of my heart that I am meant to, save the whatever, I don't know. I'm trying to get like a picture on this, but each and every one of you has a hill that you died on, and everybody left you there a corpse. And like, what happened? Who knows? Like, you died on that hill. You believed in it. You bet your life on it, and then it ended up being something that you that hurt you so much with the devil card here, that it took your voice, that it took your confidence, that it took that center of gravity, that it took that desire to show up in that way ever again, and that it took even that road, even that possibility. And so when we have this Libra card here, and we have this like harmonious, cooperative, balanced, when we're cooperating with the devil, socially aware, cooperating with the devil, artistic, cooperating with the devil, people pleasing, cooperating with the devil, fair, cooperating with the devil, idealistic, cooperating with the devil, aesthetic, cooperating with the devil. I'm reading this list down because we still find a way to exist and like maneuver around like, you know, things that we feel we can't say or ways in which we can't show up. But the devil itself is anything that says that you were born without everything that you need to serve your purpose. Everything you need to serve your purpose you have. That's number one. And what's meant for you, nobody can take. That's number two. These are 2 points of faith. These are two little points of faith that we lean into when it comes to our innovation, our adaptation, and our mitigating. We take those tools, we take that alchemy, and we bring it in what it means to be reborn. Because Ariel lost her legs and now she has to do all of this negotiating. Without the real voice, she's got to find a way to like be harmonious and I'll do it another way. This is where we create an identity in defense instead of an identity that is voice. When we create an identity in defense, and instead of an identity that is just our voice and we're singing and we're wearing our dress and we're shaking our head and we're, you know, tap dancing, you know, with our Tonka truck, you know, like that's voice, right? And then we have behavior in defense. I'm still going to express myself, but I'm going to do it in a defensive way. I'm going to say it how it is because I always say it how it is and that's the way that it is and it's who I am, that's my identity. You might be a truth speaker, but there's no reason why you can't deliver the truth with the funniest joke that ever was because it's who you are. That defense comes in, that devil comes in, where in order to express, in order to be a creator, in order to be creative, in order to have creativity, in order to be like seen and loved as a creator, you have to do it in a way that's acceptable, that's going to get the likes, that's going to get the clicks, that's going to get the right reception. And that's not operating. And then you have to behave to whatever those cues are. Whatever was successful, now you're behaving to it. Whatever was a failure, now you're abandoning it. And none of that is how expression works. None of that is how art as truth really is. And so what we're really looking for is inspiration to expression, like almost no stop train. And I don't mean that in terms of like don't have impulse control, because impulse control is important. But when you think about art and creativity, you don't want the breaks of other people's perceptions and like weird standards, like, you know, running in on what it is that you're trying to like purpose, you know, showing up like just to show up, speaking just to speak without any of the decorations. Now, with enchanted unity and let the animals be your guides and allowing as being a big part of this, you know, and I think I'm going to break this up into a bunch of pieces just so that like we can digest, because a lot of times like we don't have enough time to do that. So I'm going to make these shorter with more pieces to them. But you know, when we think about this enchanted unity, I want us to, there's a question that we did on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we did this question that is, let me remember. Oh, yeah, because this is central. These are like bookends. I want you to ask yourself the question, and before you ask yourself the question, I want you to like say brutal honesty. And you want brutal honesty with yourself, because I want you to listen to what comes out of your, like, I want you to stream of conscious the answer to this question without any breaks in place. And as soon as you start feeling the breaks, I want you to notice, okay? So I want you to ask yourself the question, how do I want to be seen? So how do you want to be seen? Ask yourself the question, how do you want to be seen? And I want you just to let it run, like let it roll. Don't stop anything. No, you know, see where the stops start to come in. See where you start to pause before you answer. Because a lot of times what people will do is, you know, the question is, you know, how do I want to be seen? And they'll start to write beautiful, but then they'll have a caveat, except like not conventionally beautiful, but beautiful, like, you know, in the soul, but like only beautiful, like to certain people who are meant to see my beauty. Like we start to caveat all of the stuff. Right? I want to be successful, but like I don't want to be a monster. Like, you know what I mean? So like when we go to answer that question honestly, what comes up with that answer is all the booby traps. So if you want to know where you have been hurt, if you want to know who hurt you and who, like, you know, who did you have to barter your voice to avoid punishment with? start to answer that question. Beautiful, but like not too beautiful, because I'm just like in the natural beautiful, but like almost. Now stop yourself. Like, here's where we want to do the healing. This is where the healing work comes in, because you are beautiful. And so if you have any like, dancing caveats about that, you are, if the way you want to be seen in the world is, brilliant, like that's it. That's the end of the sentence. Like you want to be seen as brilliant, because when we stop and we have all of these things listed out of the way that we want to be seen, like that's identity, right? But that's identity like that has a lot of influences about behavior, has a lot of influences about like all of the things and the caveats. But let's strip it down again, and let's just bring it back to like creative impulse. That's the inspiration of the mother. You were made inspired by the sentience that gave you sentience. And that sentience, when you are open to it, when you are receiving, when you aren't judging, and, like when the highway is, when that channel is clear, think about yourself as the synapse, and think about the mother as the impulse that moves through the synapse. When you are clear and open to receive, that inspiration is going to tell you, you want to be beautiful because you are beautiful, because she made you beautiful. You want to be smart because you are smart, because she made you smart. These are things that are telling you about yourself. Everything that comes up in opposition that says, no, you have to earn those things, that's economy's influence. And so we want to work with this. That's a healing thing. And so like, even when you think about like, well, how smooth is your creativity? When you have like, when you like kind of stop short around the how do I want to be seen, and now you're stopping short, I want to be seen as competent, but I don't want to seem too bossy. Now we can see where all the hurts that need to be kind of overcome are, because then there's a conversation that needs to be started about the contract that you didn't understand that you signed. In order to be seen in the way that beautiful, you also have to do it in a way that doesn't offend people. In order to be seen as successful, you also have to do it in a way. Now we have all these devil. You're doing it, you're harmonious, but the devil, you have to do it in a certain way. You're cooperative, but in this way with the devil. So now in order to again, we're reconnecting with the Mother Earth and her sentience. How do you reconnect with the sentience of Mother Earth? You reconnect with your imagination. How do you do that? Belief is permission. How do you do that? We're working on it. It's faith. Like, this is what spirituality is. Like, don't let anybody else tell you it's anything else. Spirituality is not some power broker situation. Spirituality is this, it's not easy to believe. And so we work on what it means to confront the world that we're in, and the confounding information and the confusing information, in prayer. And this is what we're doing right now, is that prayer. And so when we have disenchantment on the bottom of the deck, is this disconnection from the imagination. The imagination enchants your life. It's the enchanting aspect. It's the magic aspect. And it's not foolish. It's not pretend. It's just not in any way something that can coexist with behavior. Behavior and imagination don't meld. And if you do, we have to go back to the study. Someday I'm going to post it, because I refer to it probably every reading, about the 5-year-olds that are all geniuses, that all have a genius capacity. And then you put them into school, and that decreases year after year after year after year. We want the divine genius. We want the divine inspiration. We want the divine creativity. We want the channeling ability. The genius disappears year after year after year after year, starting at 5. That's the imagination. Who's the genius? The genius is the imagination. What's the imagination? The imagination is the divine genius. What's the divine genius? A liar. No, it's the divine genius. What's the divine genius? It's the spirit realm. What is the spirit realm? There's a lot to that. But we can start by looking at this notion of the adaptogens, which I never really thought about, because I would never have thought about sharing about my band of brothers because of all of the stops that I do, because I'm worried about seeming crazy, you know what I mean? So I don't want to talk about the band of brothers, but talking about the band of brothers allow us to look at the spirit realm as being interactive with us at the level of adaptogens, and that is part of what I'm purposed to speak about. But when I put the brakes on it, because I care how I'm perceived. Now we have the devil with the purpose instead of just the purpose doing the purpose. And so, when we find ourselves disenchanted, when we find ourselves, I don't know how to get my creativity, I don't know how to connect, I don't know, I don't have a voice, I don't have a purpose. Well, how many thorns, and how much structure is between you and what it means to express yourself? Because for me, I just caught myself. In this reading, and I think that there's no accident there. When we start to cringe and be embarrassed about things, like I'm embarrassed at my band of brothers, I love them. They're my spirit guides that aren't cool and aren't the gods, and they're not the awesome, ancestors. Like, they're the ones I play with. They're the playful ones. They don't teach me things. They make me laugh. Why is there shame there? Because as a kid, when I was psychic and I would laugh at things that other people didn't see, they made fun of me. And so now I'm ashamed of just laughing without looking around to make sure that no one's watching. So this stuff happens to all of us very young. It starts happening very young. And so, we've got two cards here, and it's no question, there's nothing, we have enchanted unity and we have disconnected disenchantment. And so, I don't want this to be an overly long reading. I have a little bit in the way of constructive criticism from some of my guides about how I use energy and how I, the pacing that we go at is often really a lot. And so, I want us to work with some of these concepts. What I did differently with this reading is I actually gave myself some questions, to work with. And I want us to work with these questions, because with the devil being about okay, this is the influence of all the the breaks. I want to be beautiful, but not too beautiful. I want to be smart, but not in this way. Wherever we have those breaks and wherever we have that influence of the toxic behavior, with economy, because when we don't behave ourselves, we get punished, and so we don't want to show up, we don't want to be perceived. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about an ecosystem where your roots are in the depths, but now you have to be balanced and have your branches in the heights, and the heights get seen. And so when we're doing this work this week, and we're going to do a bite-sized manageable amount, when we're doing this work this week, we're going to try and reconnect with the imagination in a way that really confronts how it's demonized as being not behaving. Your imagination is never about the behavior, right? And so I want you to find your own way of sort of thinking about this. King of Cups, which is your emotional intelligence all the way to the bottom of the ocean. That's going to be your deep roots. But the King of Cups is alone, because the King of Cups is not planted in the earth. The King of Cups is just in the sea, in the ocean, in the water, in the depths. But no one's close. And we want to talk about the death and rebirth that would have to happen to bring you back into the purpose where your heights, are getting the nutrients, because you're seen and you're experienced and you're appreciated and you're loved properly. And a lot of this is about finding your voice, and finding your voice is first starting with, because your voice is channeling, right? And so channeling is a connection with the divine genius. And so for you to reintroduce yourself to the divine genius, one of our Patreons, Eddie, with a group that she runs, Ostrakhan, her work is Ostrakhan. She, one of the earliest things that she had us all do was think about this idea of the demon. I'm gonna have a sip of water. The daemon in Greek, I think it's Greek, ancient Greece, a demon was not a good thing or a bad thing. A daemon, it was considered a daemon. And everybody was born with a daemon. And that daemon, when you were inspired to do something, it wasn't your fault, the daemon told you. When you made art and it was amazing, and you couldn't take credit for it because the daemon gave it to you. So that daemon was this divine inspiration. It was this interface between your channel and the divine channel. That's what it is. It's you're the channel, and it was the divine impulse. It was the divine inspiration. And most little kids have an imaginary friend growing up. And so we're all born with a daemon. Now, where you have Christianity and you have the organized religions and the behavior cults, that's economy cults, you're going to be having the daemon be demonized. And so the daemon and the imagination is the same thing. And so I want you to think about the fact that in the ecosystem, nothing is purposed for pure evil and nothing is purposed for pure good. Everything is purposed in relationship, in symphony, in adventure, in discovery, in expansion. And that you have a daemon, you have a divine inspirer. In fact, you have a many, and that spirit realm is real. There's no two ways about it. It's a facet of consciousness. Like, what facet of consciousness? Well, it's not like this realm. It's not like this dimension. We've got to stop trying to take what is a field that is not this field, and make it ours. But what it is to channel that field is the superpowers in every single way. And so you have a daemon, you have a divine genius, and that is your imagination. And so what it means to enchanted unity, reunite with the enchantment that inspires your voice, your actual superpower, your voice. When it rings out, it brings in exactly the story that you are purposed for. How you find that again, and then even show up with it with any kind of confidence, because it's been really difficult. How you even attempt to reach those heights is, first we're going to just very simply re-engage with the sentience of the earth, which you have when you're little, which is that divine genius, which is also the imagination. And I want you to attend to it, where you're peeling the chains and the lies off of it. You know what I mean? Where you're unburying it, and you're investigating what it is, and you're allowing for this life and death, rebirth process around a reconnection with the divine mother, the sentience that gave you sentience. You can sit down for prayer. Sentience that gave me sentience in the form of my divine genius, the daemon that I was born with, reveal yourself to me. And then I want you to play with it. I want you to be in this allowing place with this magician, knowing that this doesn't have to involve anyone else's opinions or thoughts or approvals or disapprovals. And I want you to allow for that passion to come in around this creativity. It's a process with Mars and Sagittarius. It's a process of discovery. And so, this Aries is like, this agency. I'm going to, fiery passion. How do you reconnect with your passion? How do you reconnect with that life force? How do you get that fire going? How do you channel? How do you find that authentic voice? Because the minute it rings out, those in purpose to work with you are going to hear it. Active, self-starting, daring, fierce, assertive, fiery, exhilarating, innocent, on a mission. Aries is also the sign that represents the child. You're going to allow yourself to step back into imagination. You're going to take action to do this. And what's going to drive you is you're going to start writing up who is your daemon. And again, credit to Eddie. She came up with this exercise through the work that she does. And Eddie, you can talk about it if you know better about the daemon than I do. I barely know about this, but honestly, this is a good assignment for all of us to do, because for us to reconnect with the imagination, that's the sentience of the earth, not the production, imagination, but the play imagination, the no agenda imagination, the imagination that isn't with other people imagination. And you're going to decide who this divine genius, this daemon is. And then you're going to, and this is a process of discovery, and then you're going to play with it. And you're going to see what it brings you this week. You're going to see what this interaction is like. And you're going to, even if you're brave enough, share what that interaction is like, because that is part of the play. When you're a little kid, you're playing by yourself, and you're having, an imagination with your divine genius, and you're, poo, 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 whatever you do when you're a kid. I don't know. I'm just picturing a kid playing in the field with some imaginary scene going on, right? Now you're going to allow yourself to have that experience with yourself. And if we're brave enough, what happens when you put little kids together is then they join imaginations. And now that scene becomes multidimensional, and then it's a whole experience. And so when we're able to create a space, and this Wednesday for Create Space, anybody who wants and feels like they can share what this experience was like, we can share what it was like to encounter a divine daemon. We can share, and some of you have already encountered it, but understanding that spirits are adaptogens. We enter the god, the goddess, the daemon at the level of archetype when we're outside of time. When we're outside of time, think about the archetypal structure as the figure 8. Think about where you are in shadow or clarity, light, with that energy, you're going to enter that story where you are, and it's going to react to you where you are. Adaptogens. This is part of the spirit realm reality, right? And so where were you with this energy? Was it scaring you? Was it comfortable? Like, what was it telling you about yourself? What was it telling you about your creativity? If you've already had these experiences, like, what is it like to have these experiences? You know, if you want to enter at a specific place because you're like, I don't want to be anywhere scary, then you like very specifically, like, you enter creatively. We play. It's imagination. You're by yourself. You can do it any way you want, but belief is permission. And so I want you to sketch out these principles, sketch out this question of, how do I want to be seen? Because that's having to do with the identity imagination part. And that's connecting with the mother. And work on that a little bit. And also work on this notion of, who's your divine genius? You've got one. We all do. You're the synapse. The inspiration's not coming from you. So with that, we're not going to go too much further. I'm going to keep it short because I want this to be a little bit more digestible. I'm just going to get, this deck is here, so I'm just going to get a couple more cards just to like wrap us up on the right note. And you know, we didn't get any noise, actually. I was hearing the hammers, I was hearing the nails, I was hearing the lawnmower start, but for whatever reason, this adapted genetic quality, you know, that is coming through related to the spirit realm is kind of showing me that when you are in ecosystem, yes, the ecosystem reacts to you and you are in conversation with it, but that is for good as much as it is for aggravation. I want to move like tomorrow and I'm like grumpy and I'm annoyed, and so like, you know, I'm an antagonist in the environment and the environment acts accordingly and things don't run smoothly. But you know, then I ease out. I'm in a reading. I'm not fighting with the environment. I'm happy to be here. Now everything quiets down. So there is something to holding power like between realms and actually being a part of the ecosystem. Like this leads to like something very magical that we see play itself out a lot, you know, in fantasy really, but I don't think that those fantasies are there for no reason. I think that there is science yet to be discovered. In fact, I know that there is. All right, let's take a look. Personal power, the mysteries of life, and a major change with the 8th house. For humanity's sake, your hopes and wishes, do it for the future with the 11th house. And in Aquarius, genius to experiment with, the discoveries of, and resulting from the eccentricity. Yeah, experiment with your divine genius for humanity's sake, because this is about your personal power. And this is about your, even like the quality of life, because Uranus, stir up the situation by using, be open to a new way and ideas about, and invent a way out. Let's invent our way out of the circumstances that we're in that feel like we are limited by those circumstances. Let's invent our way out of that. And so with that, I am going to end this reading, sending you all love, and I will see you again soon.